What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video today for the First Descendant, we're going to be doing another gun build. But surprise, surprise, it's not actually on an ultimate weapon, but rather a purple weapon called Eternal Willpower. Now, in my opinion, there are very few purple weapons which are worth the investment in terms of like developing them and putting catalysts into them, since most of these are just overshadowed by better options for you as an ultimate weapon, and there really is in certain cases no reason for you to focus on a purple weapon if there's a better ultimate version available. I said one of three because there are some other ones which are also decent, but Eternal Willpower is funny like that because as an assault rifle, it's probably one of the best assault rifles in the game. The only problem is that it doesn't have an ultimate effect, which some of the which obviously the ultimate assault rifles have, and that kind of like pushes them a little bit above. But in terms of damage profile, in terms of handling, the way that it feels, the way that it guns, everything like that, this is an exceptionally good weapon, and you will have a lot of fun with this if you build it out. Now, in the case of the point that I'm trying to make is Tamer, for example, is a super popular machine gun because it is a very, very easy way for you to increase your power level when you're just starting the game out and you don't have better options available. This thing can, when you configure it correctly and put the right modules into it, can carry you through a lot of the content, especially in normal mode and going into hard mode. And so therefore it deserves to also be mentioned. But if you're in the late game and you have to choose between something like Tamer or Enduring Legacy, then Enduring Legacy wins hands down. And that's really my point. In the case of Eternal Willpower, there is a case to be made that I prefer this above assault rifles in the game, like for example Fallen Hope, which is a fucking massive disappointment, Excava, which is kind of like really only niche in certain ways. So the point is, Eternal Willpower, I mean, let's not even talk about Divine Punishment, right? This shit needs some fucking TLC or something. But yeah, Eternal Willpower is really, really good, puts in the work, gets the job done, and I'm going to show you how to build it. So when we look at here at exactly the modules that we're using, I'll explain why we pick each and every one. Now, something that is worth noting is that Eternal Willpower by itself does not necessarily have shitty stats to begin with. It starts with 20% critical hit rate and a 1.5 times multiplier, but not that great weak point damage. It's for this reason that it makes sense to build it into a crit weapon, because you want to be capitalizing on the fact that you have a fairly, let's say, high-ish ceiling that you start from just by not even having any modules in the weapon yet. So then when we actually go to the build itself, we have some normal staples, the Holy Trinity. We have action and reaction, fire rate up, and rifling reinforcement. These all give us faster bullets and bullets that hit harder in terms of firearm attack. We do have a little bit of additional recoil. And this might be the one thing that you will find people complaining about with Eternal Willpower, is that it has a very strong recoil profile. This is true, but it is a very predictable recoil profile and easy to control once you get used to the weapon. Like me, it's possible that when you start out using this weapon, you might be like, yo, what the fuck? This thing kicks like a mule. But you'll get it under control eventually, and then once you do, you'll fall in love with it because you can turn it into a fucking laser beam. Of course, if you are further on bothered by things like recoil, I would consider swapping one of these mods out for something that reduces recoil, if that maybe helps you as well. Now, next, because we're going crit and crit damage, we want better insight and we want better concentration. Both of these, one gives us critical hit rate, the other one gives us critical hit damage, and it's what increases our profile to close to where we are here. Then Insight Focus is really good for us because it gives both. It gives critical hit rate and it gives critical hit damage. And then we stack alongside that one of the new mods which we most recently got, which is Bullet Integration, which gives us some more firearm attack and some additional critical hit damage. Now, all of these together is what essentially gives you this nice profile here. We're at 30% critical hit rate, and when we do crit, it's a 3 times multiplier, which is very, very sexy. Now, I think it is important in the case of Eternal Willpower, and this, you might consider this a flex slot rather, and that's entirely up to you. Like, for example, if you want to deal a little bit less damage but have much better recoil, then this would be where you put a recoil mod in. But fire enhancement or any, elemental enhancement is good for us here because it pushes this weapon, which already has a massive amount of DPS, even higher. Because now you get an additional 30% of elemental damage on top of this, which is really, really strong. Okay, and then last but not least, it's generally a good idea to try and put ultimate mods into a weapon, because they can oftentimes make a weapon really shine. This is no different with Eternal Willpower, where Firing Fiesta does a lot of work. By default, our clip size for Eternal Willpower is not that great. We do have one mod in here which I neglected to mention, but I mention it now, which increases our clip size ever so or our magazine size ever so slightly by 50%. So if we take this bad boy out, you'll notice we start at 25, which is very low, don't get me wrong. I would love for this thing to start at something like 40 and then be able to increase it. My god, I cannot spell today. To increase it even more. And of course, you could also, instead of fire enhancement here, you could use another mod to even increase your mag size a little bit more. But 37 is okay for me, coupled with Firing Fiesta, because what Firing Fiesta does, of course, is that after you reload, you don't consume any bullets for 3 seconds, and for those 3 seconds you can just, you know, shoot as much as you want, and then you start consuming from your normal magazine. And this is on a 15-second cooldown, which means every I would say 3 times you reload, if you're just gunning the whole time, you're going to be shooting with a clip that basically has bottomless for 3 seconds, which is really good. There are some other options which are also okay in terms of ultimate mods. Of course, there's things like I would say Sweeping Squad, which is really good as well if you're going to be using this. My configuration here is very much suited for fighting against Void Intercept bosses, but if you're going to be using this to primarily mob, then Sweeping Squad is really good, because you are killing a lot of enemies, and therefore it stacks up your firearm attack, and as long as you keep killing with a higher firearm stat, which is very nice. I would say Sharp Precision Shot can also be a potential character here for, maybe I just move my face over here, can also be a potential character here for Void Intercept bosses. If you are doing those, then Sharp Precision Shot might work if you're trying to like one round basically Devourer or something like that before he goes invul, then you can definitely do that with Sharp Precision Shot. I would not recommend Mental Focus, because you simply cannot build up enough stacks. And then, of course, if you really want to lean into the whole elemental side of things, then you could have fire enhancement and then have something like, you know, or let's say you can have electric enhancement and then have like electric conductor in as well, or something like that, which just gives you even more firearm. The point is, you have a very high DPS stat and a very high firearm attack stat, so percentages on this gives you a lot, where in certain other cases with other weapons where this is a lot lower, 30% doesn't really translate into all that much. Almost 50k is a lot, and actually gives you a lot of additional damage. Alrighty, and then just to finish us out, let's look at some substats here. So clearly, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I have been using this to do some fights against Void Intercept bosses. So bonus firearm attack versus Colossus is kind of like an auto include here, generally speaking. If you are building weapons as a primary tool to fight these bosses, then that's kind of like a slot that you need to consider putting in, just because it adds a lot of value. But by default, the other 3 I kind of think are included with most weapons, especially if you're building them crit. So firearm attack, crit hit rate, crit hit damage is auto includes. And then, like I said, the Colossus one is kind of like your flex slot. If you are thinking that you've got better options for Void Intercept bosses, you've got your Enduring Legacy, you've got your Secret Garden, you've got all this stuff, you don't need those, you know, more weapons to be able to do Void Intercepts, but you want like a nice snappy assault rifle to kill, you know, like rank and file enemies with, and as you're doing 400%, you know, dungeons and that sort of thing. Then of course, firearm attack versus Colossus can be changed to something like more rounds per magazine, which is something that this weapon struggles with a bit, and getting more than, once you start getting to 40, 45 bullets in a magazine, it starts feeling super comfortable and very nice. So that's of course something that you could also go for. And that's going to be it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, fucking cheers.